Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for invitation. It's my pleasure to being here giving this talk. Today, I'd like to talk about robotic surgery, in particular, autonomous robotic surgery that's driven by AI integrated optical imaging systems. Okay, so if you look at robotic technology, I mean, it's ubiquitous everywhere. Robots are being used for manufacturing, they're building cars and many different aspects. But if you look at a surgical medical field, and advances in medical field, from the pre-industry revolution to today, there has been a lot of advance in terms of, say, automotive. However, in terms of surgical tools, they remain at least rudimentary. And if you look at the number of surgical procedures that are performed per year for it's like 200 right now. I think it's more than 250 million procedures done worldwide. And most of those procedures are done using a very rudimentary handheld surgical tools. So the question is can you use, first of all, do you need the robotic tool? Do you need autonomous robotic tool? And is it worth to having those tools? And do we have the technology capability to move forward for those kind of technology? So, oops. Sorry, they're not synced, so but that's okay. That's okay. So I'd like to talk first of all rationale for autonomous robotic surgery. So why do we need to do it? So let me just give you an example of minimally invasive approach, or like say laparoscopic surgery, and that's actually where there has been a lot of advances in robotic surgery. So they have been moving from minimally invasive approach to teleoperative surgical robot, okay, which is still, performed by a surgeon. And if you look at the outcome of those surgeries, although those robotic surgery increase the number of laparoscopic surgery, if you look at the outcome, okay, it really has not reduced the complication rate, because at the end of the day, all these surgeries depend heavily on the experience, expertise, and then just skill level of the surgeons. The question is, can we detach those variables from the surgery itself? So I guess one of the options is to go with autonomous robotic surgery. Okay. So as I said earlier, robots are, well, I mean, you don't want to think Tesla as a robot, but in a way it is those autonomous self-driving capabilities. So you have those, robots out there, manufacturing robots and things like that. So why not on surgeries? But surgeries actually has its own challenges. When you look at cars or whatever you're manufacturing, things are well defined, right? We know the exact size, we know exact shape, we know exactly what we need to do. The problem with surgery is there's so many different variables. There are soft tissues, they deform, it's hard to tell one part of the tissue from others. Okay. And especially when you open it up, even if there's no bleeding, everything is like different shade of pinks. Okay. And then so the question is, you need to have advanced technology to recognize different types of tissues. And also it actually has to have a capability of dynamically adjust, because as you perform surgery, whatever the tissue you're working with, they deform, they changes constantly. Okay, so I want to give you like few examples of autonomous robotic surgery that's driven by AI, driven imaging, systems. One of the robots I like to highlight is a smart tissue autonomous robot. We call it STAR. So it's a suturing robot. Has a suturing arm and then also have a sensing imaging arm that guides the suturing arm. So Why anastomosis? Because it is necessary and critical part of almost all surgical procedures. And although you think that it's easy, and because surgeons do perform this in generally pretty well, but for urology and gynecological surgery, there is actually a significant complication rate exists during this surgery. So in terms of complication rate, there's for like a multivisceral translational anastomosis, there's like 30%. For colorectal anastomosis, 19%. And then cardiovascular is like 1 or 2%. So there is actually significant problems with the manually sutured tissues. Okay. So I'm not going to go too much detail into our imaging systems. But basically what we could do is we could actually use optical imaging system and using AI to be able to recognize tissue, its motion, and then basically do a surgical planning, and then use that as a feedback, control feedback to control the robot itself. Okay. Well, I don't know if I can play the video here. Okay. So basically what we could do is use this kind of 3D imaging system driven by AI to generate 3D map for surgical planning. Okay. And then also we can actually create which part of tissue is which is what. So just generate landmarks, because as you perform surgery, the tissues move. So you need to know, for example, if you're doing a tumor resection, you need to know where is the tumor relative to a certain part of the organ. Okay. Not only that, also you need to know what kind of tissue you're dealing with. Is it muscle tissue? Is it fat tissue? And is it or something else? So we could use AI to differentiate and segment different parts of the tissue. And once you have all those information, then you can actually say, hey, this is the area where you need to say, for example, a suture. Are there blood vessels? Is there other form of critical tissues that you need to avoid? And then once you've done that, then you can actually say, so these are the points we want to suture. Okay. And then you start performing the suture. But of course, as you suture very first one, everything will change, right? Everything will move. So you need to, in real time, provide the feedback. Okay. So we done a ex vivo test. So we done a manual laparoscopic surgery, and we did a robotic assisted surgery, and then we also use a star. So you see those 3 examples. And just by looking at those examples, it's hard to tell which one's better. So what we did was we did a flow test. So if you look at the so left bottom, so that's related to the manual laparoscopic surgery, and then how the flow is. And then you see some turbulence where the suture occurred, right? Which is seen by the red. And then if you also look at robot-assisted surgery, by the way, the robot-assisted surgery is done using a Da Vinci robot, okay? And it's not bad, but still there's a turbulence. But you compare it to STAR and you see how smooth laminar the flow is, okay? So you could see that this autonomous anastomosis robot does better job in performing this suture. So we done, after seeing this ex vivo test, encouraged by the result, we performed live peak surgeries. So this shows the video of that surgery. Okay. So we sutured so this is an intestinal anastomosis. We did a back wall, a front wall, and then as you can see, the whole thing is moving because we're dealing with a live animal. So there is a physiological motion that we have to deal with. Typically, they're like fraction of a hertz all the way to like 13 hertz. And also, we have to also prepare for unwanted motion, certain jerking and things like that. So this this tissue has to be constantly monitored and tracked. And then the planning map has to be updated. Okay. So after we done this surgery, we did 5 pigs. And then as you could see, all the pigs after the surgery gained weight, except I believe 1. Okay, and they all survived. So the outcome was very positive. Okay, and then so we're further continuously developing the surgical technology. Hopefully, we can go early clinical study within a few years. Okay. So that's a bigger robot, but I think this AI optical image, a driven autonomous robot could be in the form of handheld surgical tools, which is more adaptable in surgical setting. So there are different types of handheld robotic tools. They could play things like in neurosurgery, or cardiovascular, eye, ear, nose, and throat. Okay. And, the talk just before was talking about stem cells and gene. I'm actually very excited about, the application of those things. And one area that I'm particularly interested in is actually for retinal transplant or regeneration. There's a lot of as you know, the blindness is a big medical issue worldwide that has to do with the retinal degeneration. And then one possible solution is a stem cell gene therapy. But in order to do that, you have to be able to deliver those genes and stem cell very accurately to the, let's say, photoreceptor or RPE layers of retina, which requires less than tens of micron resolution in terms of delivery position. So you could use this type of optical imaging using AI to identify different layers to deliver drugs very accurately. So this kind of demonstrates that. So this is using a porcine eye. So there's a video there, but I don't know how to play it. So, and if you look at the result, so if you look at the blue line is the results using the AI-driven imaging technology. You see there's hardly any variations in the delivery position compared to the red one, which is the manual injection. Okay, so you can see that this technology allows a very precision delivery of drugs to retina. And then I just wanted to show you different examples of the tools. This is a forceps, micro forceps, also using this AI-driven 3D imaging technology. This imaging technology here is called a optical coherence tomography. Has a resolution of about position resolution about like 1 or 2 microns. And you could see by controlling the position and then this AI-driven imaging, you can really control the position of the forceps and be able to grab the target that you want very precisely. So this graph just kind of summarizes that result. The last device, I hope I'm not going over too much, has to do the cornea transplant surgery. Okay. And so the cornea opacity is a leading cause of blindness. It accounts for about 2 million new cases of unilateral blindness every year. So it's a big issue. And only solution is cornea transplant surgery. And there are different types of cornea transplant surgery. One is what they call full thickness. You remove the full thickness of the cornea. Another one is called deep anterior laminar keratoplasty, which is you remove basically it's a partial form of a partial thickness cornea transplant surgery. This deep anterior laminar keratoplasty is a preferred method because it actually preserves the endothelial and descemet membrane. So there's a less rejection and things like that. There's advantages, but the problem is separating the stroma layer from very thin Descemet's membrane is extremely difficult. The failure rate is very high. So basically, we developed a robot. I don't know if you can see it. The kind of yellow thing, it's a robotic tool that's docked onto a cornea, and make basically there's a cutter that drills into the red depths and dissect the Descemet's membrane, and then basically the button is removed. But in order to do that, we have to have a ability to track different tissue and then also to drive the needle. So, and we use a 3D imaging system plus the AI to be able to segment different layers and then control the robot. So as you can see, by using the robotic tool, you get much better results, outcome compared to freehand. And then you see the very big difference in the dispersion of the results. Okay. So in summary, I'd like to say photonic image-guided autonomous surgical robot and then tools have potential to complete surgical tests with more accuracy and precision than human operators. But that doesn't mean that we plan to replace clinicians. So if there's a doctor sitting out there, please don't take me wrong, because they still need to supervise. It's just, think of it as an additional advanced tool in your disposal. Okay. All these tools, we have done live animal studies, and we're hoping to go into early clinical study as I said earlier, within a few years. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.